The Seer, Violets in the Grass, by Jessica Ariel Morocco. Chapter 7. The Riddlers. The place of non-ordinary reality brought me to what I refer to as the Riddlers. They are the ones who give me information piece by piece and ask me to solve the puzzle. It can be a combination of synchronicity, imagery, symbology, and other forms of hidden meaning. They will visit me in my meditation, give me hints, sometimes one at a time. This is not too much dissimilar to the unraveling of secret societies that use layers of meaning attached to symbols that define a specific belief or view and speaks without talking. Telling tales of the past and hidden links to our future can be quite intriguing. I recall being in a mediumship class when I looked at a man across from me and saw him in the past. He was wearing a patriot outfit, but I knew all along that he was in fact a pirate. He stood there waiting by a landscape of evergreen trees near the ocean while his pirate crew started unloading some of the treasures from his ship. I felt like it was in New Hampshire or northern New England. The man I was observing, being an intuitive as well, insisted that this took place somewhere in South America. I didn't agree because the landscape was accurately New England. However, we were both in agreement that the coins that he was burying into the ground were Spanish doubloons. I said to the man in my class, "You were a pirate dressed as a patriot, and I see you after you had stolen some gold from the King of Spain during that time." Fascinated by it, he looked deeply and gathered the information he needed or didn't need. My strongest feeling was that he had encountered something far greater than the daring life of a rebel pirate. Months later, I heard a story begin to churn and to release of words unfolded into a story that came in crystal clear from my inner ears. Prescott's waiting. I kept hearing that. Prescott's waiting. Ariel. Prescott's waiting? Who said that? The voice. Prescott's waiting. Ariel. Prescott's waiting for what? The voice. Prescott's waiting for help. There are soul pieces to retrieve for the sailors of the sea. You will know who they will be when you unleash the curse from Poseidon's prison by the sea. Ariel. What should I do? Tell me, how can I help? The voice. We will give you the story and you can read it for yourself. The words began to churn, and one sentence at a time the message came to me in a rhyme. I began to write, and then it stopped cold. Ariel. What happened? I'm writing this story, but I don't hear you anymore. The dictation stopped. Then there was quiet. The voice had left, and only a few paragraphs were written. I saved it and put it aside. The time for it to be revealed had not yet arrived. It would be nearly a year that had passed when I would discover that there was so much more that needed to come to the surface. The complexity of this story was related to a phenomenon of crossing over interdimensional space. I felt directed to read and study some of the incidences of the Bermuda Triangle and the Philadelphia experiment. In both cases, there were a series of strange, scientific, unexplained disappearances of humans and physical objects alike. What were they telling me that I needed to know, or what did they want me to share with others? Is this just a matter of science being discovered or greater understanding of those things around us? More months had elapsed, and I finally received this story about Prescott, the pirate who dressed like a patriot to disguise his true intent among the early settlers. Prescott's waiting. Prescott's waiting for a sign from the stars above that have been his guide. He followed the course of ship and sail. He traveled the seas through wind, rain, and hail. It didn't matter what lesson was to be learned. He took the challenge of stealing all the gold he could hoard. There was one glitch. The wind did switch and cast him hard upon the shore. Not knowing where or what he should do, he looked around for a guide or two. His men were frantic from the stormy seas, and they swam in from a capsized boat through winds that created this catastrophe. He promised his men, through thick or thin, he would share his pirate's treasure with all of them. Yet, within his heart, he could never part with the gems and the jewels and the golden doubloons. He had many dreams in his heart, and he looked long and hard, as he plotted and planned to have the greatest riches throughout the land. "What say you, sir? Have you not heard? They are searching for the treasures that we never deserved," said the simple-minded deckhand. "Do you think it is safe to try to fool the king, who entrusted us with transporting his most treasured doubloons and gemstone rings?" The Spanish galleon was on its course to take back gold from the Peruvian coast. This was a treasure prepared for the king of the Spanish army. We all know him as Ferdinand. His wife Isabella had her head up high and said she would tear down every pirate ship that went by if they stole her gold and treasured prize. Prescott brushed off the military jacket that he stole from a ship when he lied to the English fleet's captain. Prescott said they were shipwrecked and he and his men needed a ride back to England. After a bit of a mutiny, they stole off with the English ship. The Atlantic Ocean couldn't contain the deceitful notion of Prescott's wicked domain. So Prescott was off to steal another golden apple when he and his band became shipwrecked on the new land where all their treasures were worthless. You see, Prescott was an adventurous man caught up in capturing treasures from other lands. As he pounced upon every opportunity displayed, he could be called a true treasure hunter of his day. The legends say that he fared well in any situation, a man who thinks quickly on his feet and is full of imagination. Let truth be known, when it comes to a plan, he fumbles and foils the rest of the band. He gets too nervous and doesn't think things through, and in the end he gets caught and sometimes arrested, as some deceitful men do. All of these worries and all of these cares seem to accumulate until he can no longer bear it. Then arrives a few men with a patch over their eyes, some with a crooked grin, and others limping with a wooden limb. They are a rogue bunch of players, too hard to tie down. They travel the world like troubadours without dancing around. Every coastal city knows them, yet they are most inclined to stay by the mainland. Why tarry so far in England, when we can get what we need here in Boston? The ports have all we need or want. We can hide our treasure booty right off the shore, and we may come back for more. Let's float our boat along the Cape and steal a bootleg keg or more, then swim to the lovely ladies by the shore. We have what we want, or could ever need. This was the greatest group of rogues he had ever seen. So they stayed in Boston, dressed up like good patriots, and wandered through the city with good intentions to settle there. No one suspects that we are pirate rogues at best. Let's build a new ship and settle down in our new home. We can take our travels across the seas, then return again without anyone suspecting a thing. They may think we are bound for West Indies trade. We can bring back other goods, as they wouldn't know about our pirate ways. They found a shipbuilder who had mighty ships of strength, so they could sail across the ocean and hardly ever feel a wave. So they cast their sail and carried their goods and had a few flasks of absinthe and some snuff. Cheers! We are all on a good trip, my mates. Then the darkness began to collect by the gates. The evening grew dark as they drank heavy that night. A pitcher of gin got them all in a fight. The next morning, dawn, they saw the ship and climbed on. Not much damage had come to this group. Each looked at one another with a suspicious look. You are greedy, my friend. I can see it in your eyes. You would take a man's life if he took a pence from your hide. Each man sized up the other and took into account whether or not he was an enemy or a brother. The colonial ship was now ready to launch, and it took in the wind and began to float on. At sea, it was a different tone. Prescott grew weary of the conversations that went wrong. He looked at his men and decided to speak with them about treachery, of greed, and the wicked way men can be. Yet Prescott was also suspicious indeed. He had an argument with the rogue to such a degree that he brought him to a deserted island to die without food or water or any other way he could survive. It was a long, hard trip, and the men held their tongues for the fear of what Prescott was capable of. He was a hard captain who wouldn't tolerate an upheaval, and they quietly sailed to their destination in the Caribbean. The boat began to sway in an unfortunate way when they entered the triangle set by Bermuda's Bay. It began to swirl in a vortex-like whirl, as the ship seemed so eerie and faded in and out with strange lightning. The men were full of fright, and they held on to their dear lives. An aura covered the deck as the deckhand fell from the ship. In greed, he carried the gold in his mouth and choked on it while he swam. That's all we can say about him. The hefty ship was sturdy, yet tossed about like a leaf in the wind. They all knew that something strange was happening. Prescott reached to an older sailor and grabbed him by the shirt and said, "Tell me, in all your travels, have you ever seen this strange light or a ship magically disappearing from your sight?" The elder said, "No, my friend, but I've heard of this magic happening when men do wicked deeds that cause them to open the door to fatal tragedies. We are being rendered into oblivion. We are being erased from all of our own consciousness. It is taking us into another dimension where we must sail until we are allowed to live again." Then the boat disappeared into the ethers of air. Another ocean awaited them there. They seemed to fall from the sky, then landed on water. Forever they sailed to a destiny unknown to them. Then one day the mercy of all that is right allowed them to speak of the wickedness in their hearts. Out of the darkness came a bright light, and a voice that sounded like thunder was heard during that night. "I would have allowed you to kill one another. Instead, you are forced to live along with your brother. Learn the things that you should have known best. You must not be murdering and stealing while on my ocean's crest. It is a sacred place that sees and hears all your own disgrace. It swallows up the most wicked deeds done by those driven by their wicked needs. The only way the ocean will set you free is if you promise that you will live more honestly." The men began to clamor, then mumbled to themselves, "We will consider your kind notions, and may we be allowed to talk? We have seen many men do wickedness upon the earth. Some of the rulers we have stolen from are now sitting on cushioned cloth. Where is their day of judgment? It is men like them who have corrupted us. They offered us good money to take what they could not." Then the voice grew solemn. The winds around them subsided. "You will cast your sails for Poseidon, for he is here to spin your pot." The voice then left, and the men did sweat as they waited for another drop. A creature from the deepest ocean to take the boat with the most ferocious tempest. It was the most frightening scene, as many of the men died in the nightmarish dream. Prescott held on, still waiting for a sign. Only this time he was wondering why he didn't repent of his crime. "It's all done. I repent of my life, most holy one. Please lift me from the crime of doing all this evil. I would like to save my life if you will allow me to lift from this tempest." The other men held onto the boat with bended knees. They all wept in sorrow. "Will we ever live until tomorrow?" One more toss, and a few more fell off the ship. The harsh pull of the ship's imbalance made it tip. A quick movement in the boat seemed to disappear. One looked at his own hand to see if he was still there. Then they moved into another dimension. 50 years had passed as they stepped into a new generation. The world was so different and unusual too. The nightmare of death had ended, but now they couldn't return to the life they once knew. There at the triangle, time slipped like sand in a glass, and they never knew how they got there, or how to return home at last. Back on the seas of human existence, some sober-looking pirates tore off their grin of resistance. Yet after all this danger, few of the pirates picked up their thoughts of defiance. A wickedness came over one pirate as he looked at the sober expression of a youthful young patriot. A hatred grew that no one else could undo, and he reached in his pocket and pulled out a gun and shot this young pirate's head clear through. Caught the attention of the entire crew, and he responded in an arrogant tone, "I'll be damned if he gets to begin his new life in his youth." Another pirate remarked, "He was the most innocent of all of us. Why did you kill this boy when you have seen the other wicked ones fall?" The old pirate took a deep inhale of breath, then with a guttural voice revealed how his heart was still in hell. "You can change the child or the adulterous bride, but you can't change the wickedness that the pirate holds inside. Try if you dare and see if I care. You will find that my life is not meant to be repaired." He leaned back on the wooden bench by the ship's wall and showed no emotion toward anything at all. Then the other pirate shouted out, "What a senseless death, you fool! Do you think that this is to be ignored too? You were probably the one who brought us into the tempest with the rest of the wicked crew. Let's be away with you then, back to the sea where you can be reckoned with, and we will have nothing to do with you. If you have any good left in you, then Godspeed, you will survive the brave seas. However, if you happen to still be wicked, then we have sent you back to where you ought to be. The coast is only miles away, but I have strong feelings that you will return to Poseidon today." The galley of men lunged forward and all seized him. They cast him into the blue sea, and he began to swim. The ocean did not swallow him, and he safely swam to shore. And in the end, it was a sea urchin who took the life from him when he stepped on the ocean's floor. As for Prescott, he spoke to his remaining small group of pirates while they set foot on the shores, pondering all their many lessons. Wherever we may be, we should respect all men, woman, land, and sea. No more playing with our destiny. In the future, it will be a simple life for me. In this story, I was able to understand a deeper meaning of life and the hidden things of the heart. The excuses for bad behavior under a guise of pointing out the behavior of others. There was quite a bit to consider, but who gave me this message? Was it the souls of spirit who had experienced this trauma? I'm not sure. The answers were never clear, yet I know that the story came intertwined with something else, more significant. I lived during the time period as a patriot or a Minuteman. I'm not sure completely. However, during a regression, I referred to myself as a man named John Harding, who lived near Sudbury, Massachusetts. Was I that man? And did I know something about that ship? In my quest to find the answer, I searched online and discovered a book, Sailing's Strangest Moments, Extraordinary but True Tales from Over 900 Years of Sailing, written by a man named John Harding, and somehow connected to Longfellow. I might add that the Wayside Inn in Sudbury, Massachusetts, also had a familiar feel to it, despite the fact that I had not ever seen or visited that place in my current lifetime. The man named John Harding that I discovered online was a contemporary author who still lives in our generation. Interesting to see that he had collected these old tales about ships from the past. How do these synchronicities work? I thought to myself and expressed my concerns to my friends. What did I know? And how was my connection to the early revolution of the United States of any value? Or maybe it wasn't. I'm not sure. But I had many interesting experiences that kept bringing me back to that time period and location where I continued to awaken to a personal reality, as I supposed was the primary reason why this was revealed. Then I considered the primary purpose could have been to serve as a releasement or healing of our nation, and the message may have been delivered by our patriotic forefathers from the past. So getting back to the Wayside Inn in Sudbury, Massachusetts, other strange things began to happen. I had planned on visiting the Wayside Inn with my friends, as I thought it might reveal something regarding my lifetime as a patriot. Instead, something else happened there that was equally strange. Prior to my visit, I heard the name Lizzie Borden. Then that came to me in a voice, and I thought that was strange, as it appeared to be coming to me out of the blue without any other meaning. Then I heard the title of the famous old poem, Mary Had a Little Lamb. Out of the curiosity, I looked online and found information about Lizzie Borden. I completely discarded the part about Mary Had a Little Lamb. It turned out that on my visit to the inn, I entered a small schoolhouse called the Redstone School. This is also called the Mary Had a Little Lamb School because a young girl by the name of Mary Sawyer, who was believed to be the original Mary from the poem, attended that school. During our visit there was a brilliant storyteller who shared tales of history and legends to our group. Her poise and knowledge held us captive to her skill of storytelling. We waited in anticipation. She wove a story that bridged Mary Lamb, who lived in 1764 to 1847, who wrote a contemporary version of Shakespeare's works called Tales from Shakespeare, to Mary Sawyer, 1830, child who attended the school. The question regarded the inspiration for the poem, the name Mary Lamb, or was it Mary Sawyer, the little girl who actually brought a lamb into the classroom? As the storyteller continued to weave her tale, the story revealed a much darker side to the history. Mary Lamb was accused of murdering her mother with a kitchen knife. Mary Sawyer, who became Mrs. Mary Tyler, ended up working in an insane asylum. During those days, workers in insane asylums had questionable processes and abuses with how they dealt with the mentally ill. Neither Mary was white as snow. Their lives revealed as an unsavory aid of darkness that most of us could not fathom. The storyteller went on to say that maybe Mary Lamb was Jack the Ripper. This is when it all came together for me. Suddenly I became aware of what the possible victims were saying from the grave. Mary Lamb was not Jack the Ripper, but rather Lizzie Borden in another lifetime. Lizzie Borden, 1860 to 1927, fit the modus operandi of behavior as well as concluded the voices speaking out for me to reveal this connection. The following day, I went to a flea market in Newburyport and was standing by a bunch of books. There was a woman standing across from me who said out loud, "Look, is that a picture of Lizzie Borden?" I turned around, and directly above me was a picture of a woman who I believe was Lizzie Borden. Strange things like this seem to happen along the way to confirm what I need to know. It is hard to believe that this is how it all unfolds for me, and I feel that this part is somewhat complete. I have so many memories of living in New England, going back to my childhood. Since I had many personal challenges and sorrows regarding death, financial strain, and other types of loss, I had longed to leave the city and had a deep desire to begin fresh and new elsewhere. This was one of the reasons why I moved to the Midwest early on. In retrospect, the Midwest was to prepare me for the lessons and experiences I would encounter back here in New England. It wasn't the memorable changing of the four seasons or the historical quaintness of many New England towns. It wasn't the oceanside views of a large coastline easily accessible to me. It wasn't my family or friends, who I could easily visit from any location. It wasn't my karma, my destiny that kept me pinned to this land to help me awaken to my personal realities. I believe I was kept here to help me to remember who I was, what I am, and where I should go. I don't think there is another place on earth that could have brought me to the point of ordinary and non-ordinary reality in such a succinct way. My mission, if there is one, is to search for whatever truths or fantasy that come my way. I hold open the ever-revolving door of possibilities and never surrender to the times. Okay, so chapter 7, The Riddlers. It's a very tangential chapter, and I recognize that, and this is the workings of my brain that, or my intuition, playing dot to dot, or finding the linking points that sort of come around to reveal some more information, expanding on what I'm looking at in the first place. And it feels like it's a never-ending riddle. You resolve something, it brings you in this roundabout way, and before you know it, you're looking at something and you say that that's what they were trying to show me. And I don't know why the information just doesn't come in and say this is the answer. That's it. It doesn't work that way. They make it into, I don't want to call it a game, but it's almost, there's times when I feel like they're not supposed to be telling us certain things, or we're not supposed to figure things out. So there are those that are sneaking through the astral just saying, hey, this is the answer over here. Well, this will lead up to it, and then they disappear. And then another time they show up again and like, oh, no, take a look at this. And so then you have this linking sort of information that seems unrelated, but if you follow that path, you will find what you're looking for. This is how a lot of the majority of my personal sessions are, is people say, well, I don't really get where you're going with this. And I tell them to just relax, just, let's keep following this thread, I call it. And as you follow that thread, that it leads to something else. Now, not everyone works this way. I understand that. But it does, it's like some people want to go from point A to point B. It's a straight line. I think when I'm working, it's like an interesting journey. It's like hiking through the woods, or going down a very uneven path. And there's little twists and turns and crossroads and all sorts of different things. And that's essentially, unfortunately, for those who want to see point A to point B and very linear, will not appreciate some of my writings, particularly some of the chapters that get very much into what some might refer to as chasing rabbits, or jumping from topic to topic that seems unrelated, and in the end I try to tie it all together. But it's not because I'm doing it by accident, but this is the way it works. This is the way the astral works. Or this is the way the quantum works. So when you talk about Alice in Wonderland, and Alice is following a rabbit that seems to be going no particular place, but randomly jumping from here to there, suddenly she finds herself in a location where she's supposed to arrive at, fulfill an agreement, getting rid of that creature that's there troubling everybody, and then she's released back up into her ordinary reality, returning back from non-ordinary reality, which is not necessarily not real. But if we can't all visit there, and we can't all, point at it and say this is an actual location, you can't put it on a map per se, without it being referred to as fictitious, because you can't just get on a boat or a plane or a train or a bus to get there. But if a handful of people have seen it and witnessed it and experienced it, then it may be that it is true, it is real, and so it's just not everyone is able to access it unless they're in the right frequency or state of mind. So we have multi-dimensions of realities, not all of them exactly the same, and sometimes they're a reflection of another reality. And so this is what's happening here, but they all sort of impact each other in different ways. Getting back to the chapter at hand, chapter 7, the Riddlers, I talk about the story of Prescott. So here I am sitting in a class, meditation class, and a person sitting across from me. Now he's very fixated on what I'm seeing, so it's one of those things with, I see what you see, but this is what I see type of thing. And so he's intuitively, instead of tuning into what he should be looking at, he starts tuning into everything that I'm doing, because he knows that I'm seeing things. Instead of trying to discover what he is seeing or what he should be seeing, he starts looking at what I'm seeing. And then it creates this intersect of his information, my information. And then we discover that, of course, why are people usually interested in others, is there's some kind of connection. The connection, however, was even stranger, where it is this pirate lifetime. And I looked at him and I said, I'm looking at a buried treasure in New Hampshire. And he said, no. He said, it's in South America. Now, whether either one of us is right or wrong, I don't know. I did see the coins that were the doubloons, and this whole story came to me and explained everything. And he was quite interested in the story at the time. And I explained to him how, we were caught in this really weird place, and then kind of the Bermuda Triangle type of effect. Poseidon then, has access to people when they're taken into his space, and then, of course, it's sort of a lesson, but why they're selected, they question many things, which makes, I thought the conversation itself was quite revealing, in how the people said, hey, the royal people, the royal families actually hired us to do this, why aren't they here? Why is it us that are being punished? And so the question doesn't actually get answered. And so it just, leaves a lot of open-ended questions, but also how the young boy in the end gets killed, and apparently that was my destiny. I was that young boy in the end. Anyhow, so then I start reflecting and seeing different things that happen, and then my lifetime as a Minuteman. Being a boy again, sitting in a tree with a ponytail, holding a gun of some sort, and being quite young. And seeing this sort of like parallel of who I was, and how, the name John Harding came up, and how all of these different things, it's all being triggered. And then the discussions about the Wayside Inn and Sudbury, and my weird, information about Lizzie Borden and Mary Had a Little Lamb, and all these little strange things, and just sort of linking it all together. And then, just going into this museum, and with each and every step, with all the different places that I go to and the people that I'm interacting, it's almost like picking up another piece of the puzzle, and then arriving at something that, sort of, makes a lot of sense to me. It's a lot easier to understand it, and then to try to then write it down and convey it. So I know that part is challenging, but I think people are getting, the process. Well, of course, this doesn't make it an easy read. It's not done intentionally, I assure you. So I hope you enjoyed this part and saw the many different pieces. And I don't doubt that some of you have other pieces added to it, because I see comments that are after each one of these chapters, and it's quite interesting what people have to say about how it triggers some other ideas in their minds too, regarding the connections, and of course the ones that I refer to as the Riddlers. So not to be confused with the Jokers. I'll just set that straight for right now. That's the Riddlers are, whether it's a challenge on the way that they're trying to, show you it's not that easy. You have to figure it out. We're trying to kind of guide you, but we want you to figure out. Whereas the Joker is into deception. So that's it for the Riddlers, Chapter 7. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy it.
None of you stand so tall.